I think I found our voter fraud. I found the ubiquitous fraud that Donald Trump is talking about that will somehow bring all of this into focus, where his sulking and that air of ridiculousness that he's walking around with, claiming that he somehow won something that he has lost monstrously. It's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. I don't think. I don't think he's going to admit defeat. But in the meantime, with him not admitting defeat, well, he has to create this hysteria about election fraud. And so what's taking place right now in Georgia is a recount. The Democratic Party has won Georgia going back for God knows how long. And it's by thousands of votes. Now, the Georgia Secretary of State has started to blow the whistle. I kept thinking whether or not this was voter fraud. And I thought about this far too long, or far longer than I think I should have. But basically, it's the absence of a thing into itself. Think about what I'm asking for the moment. It's the absence of a thing, meaning a thing that's not there. Is it synonymous with a thing, especially if there's a place for it, and yet it's absent? If it's expected, and yet it's absent. Like, is the very fact of expectation, to some degree, creating like a vacuum or a hole, or like a null value? And the null value in and of itself can be considered a vote, a tally, an incorrect tally. What I'm talking about is from the standpoint of voting. If, let's say, all of these people go and they make their votes, and let's say for the moment that a woman, Karen, puts out a ballot, and for whatever reason, they pull this ballot and say, this ballot is not legit. Now, the record set has Karen being among the people who are voting or voters. She filled out this particular tally. And yet, the fact that this legal tally was pulled away, is there something there? Is there a hole? And does the hole in and of itself constitute something? Especially since the hole denotes the thing that's not there. It almost accentuates the fact that something is not there. And does that in and of itself represent a thing? The reason I was asking that had to do with the issue of voter fraud. And if Karen put in something, let's say a ballot with values, and they removed that ballot, and now you have a null value, well, the null value is wrong. I get that null is like a nothing of sorts. But if there's an expectation of something being there, and that thing is not necessarily there, you could say that not being there is a thing in and of itself, and is providing an incorrect value for what is supposed to be there. I wanted to call it voter fraud, but I think that's too much work to try to get to the voter fraud thing. So it was easier to just explain exactly what it is. In this case, Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger is very cross at his fellow Republicans. Now, the reason he's cross is because Donald Trump's screaming about voter fraud. Where's ubiquitous voter fraud? Look at Georgia, look at this place. And Twitter having it basically saying, these are lies, this guy is lying through his teeth because he wants to remain president. All of these people calling this a coup are ridiculous. He spends all his time on Twitter tweeting. When is he doing the coup stuff? This seems like a Twitter rant. But besides that point, Brad is making the point that this election was fine. I am open to anybody bringing me anything from the standpoint of evidence to get across that there is what you guys are claiming. I will look at it. I will investigate it honestly and thoroughly. And up to this point, it's just been nonsense. The vote in Georgia is ticking along. They have just under 5 million votes that they need to count. They also have to match up the levels, to make sure that the name matches the envelope and so forth. And within the context of that, you have a lot of variability, I would argue, especially if people have their political sides, of Democrat and Republican. Do I think that most people have enough integrity not to do that? Yeah, I do. Do I think everyone? No. Do I think it radically affected the vote? No. If there is some higher psyop or something that's going on that has more control over this stuff, okay, maybe. I don't know this. I don't know what I don't know. But in this very specific case, no, I don't have this belief in the ubiquitous voter fraud that somehow undermined Donald Trump's election. I don't begrudge him for not conceding. I don't begrudge him for pushing for the legal avenues to the degree that he has a legitimate case. I do begrudge him if he's taken bullshit cases. I do begrudge him if he knows that he's lost, but doesn't want to accept it because of issues of ego, even if it's something deep down, then yeah, I do blame him for that, because that's pretty fucking petty. And it is what I expected Donald Trump. But from a legal standpoint, the pettiness aside, what are the legal items that he can get? Give it to him. Give him his day in court. Give him all that stuff. And at the end of the day, when all of that stuff is exhausted, walk. You can't begrudge him it if it is constitutional right to do those things. Nor can you hold it against him. In this very specific instance, though, you have people who are trying to help Trump, pro-Trump, senators and whatnot, maybe not necessarily heavily infrastructure in regards to their support for Trump. And honestly, if I'm being bluntly honest, I don't even think they like Trump all that much at all. I think what it boils down to is that even though Trump is a lame duck, failed one-term president that has thousands of people being infected a day with COVID, going estimated like 2,000 a day, dying from the disease. And he is here fucking on Twitter. I mean, it's a joke. It's like, why do you even want to be president? You clearly can't do the job or don't give a shit about the job when you have this many deaths and this number of spikes and the acceleration of the virus. You have ICUs overrun, and not just overrun, ERs overrun. And think about what you need to do to ensure that the people in those places are safe, meaning you add an extra level, an extra order of magnitude of difficulty in dealing with not just COVID cases, but even regular cases. How do you diagnose cancer in a hospital that is jam-packed with COVID or some other kind of illness? Oftentimes, you probably can't. How do you stay with a relative that's sick in hospitals that are dealing with COVID? You don't. Like, those people are in there by themselves. I'm making the point that Donald Trump's failure in this has had dramatic repercussions. I remember when the rate of transmission, it was like 1 million people within, like, let's say like a month. Then it was like 14 days. Then it was 7. I mean, the number is being chopped down. I'm sorry, it was 10, then 7. The number is just chopped down, which means the death toll is going to spike within 2 weeks. But what is Trump doing? Tweeting. What are the Republicans doing? Lying on behalf of Trump. Why are they lying on behalf of Trump? Because those congressmen, the people like Lindsey Graham, they have races that they need to run because they're not getting out of politics, at least over the course of this year. And as such, they want the cred that Trump gives them by saying, yeah, I back Trump in this. I'm going to push for Trump in this. I want people to see me pushing for Trump in this. Whether or not it's heartfelt or not is almost irrelevant to the point. What's in that person? Well, who knows? You know, it's like the ghost in the machine stuff. Doesn't matter if that person is lying to you, if everything that person does basically promotes the lie. I know that sounds bizarre, but the fact of the matter is Graham and some of these other Republicans could be backing Trump because they know that the credibility of doing so would last when Trump goes. It's the Sanders thing. Do you have any loyalty to Tulsi because Tulsi backed Sanders during the primary? Oh, yeah, I do. Same effect, Republican Party. In this case, though, the Republicans have been pushing him to be more strict in regards to getting rid of ballots. And some of those ballots just so happen to be legal. Now, he's not saying that he did it. He's making the point that they are pushing him to do so. This is Washington Post. Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger said Monday that he has come under increasing pressure in recent days from fellow Republicans, including Senator Lindsey Graham, who said he questioned the validity of legally cast absentee ballots in an effort to reverse President Donald Trump's narrow loss. Basically, Trump lost. And we need you who are counting these votes to invalidate some of these votes. Because if you invalidate some of these votes, we have a better chance of winning the race. It's slimy, right? But understand what this is. This is the presidency. This is top seat outside of the people who are putting money in the president's G-string. And so being the top seat, it's one of those things where the pressure is so high that Republicans, under normal circumstances, whether you're talking about voter ID laws, whether you're talking about interstate cross-check, they knock those ballots out almost as par for the course. So the fact that dude in Georgia is not doing it is pretty fucking, astonishing. He has some level of integrity in himself. He's called Trump's people charlatans. He's even called them liars, both of which are true. The count is going on, and the count is continuing. And so Georgia, there's also a runoff race for 2 races in that Senate. Now, those 2 races are going to actually decide who runs the Senate, either Mitch McConnell or Chuck Schumer. It's hard to know. Georgia, under normal circumstances, all of those runoffs were won by Republicans. If that happens, Joe Biden is going to have a very hard life, in one respect. And in another respect, he's going to use the Republicans as an excuse for why he can't do X or can't do Y. Mark my words, it is exactly what is going to take place. I would bet he is praying for a Republican Senate just to use that particular excuse. But either way, because if he gets both, he has to do something. And when you don't do anything, the party is punished for not doing something legit, especially Democrats, especially in the midst of a pandemic, and they would get exposed as utterly worthless. But in this very specific case, Joe Biden is, look, I guess my point is Donald Trump has gotten to the point where none of this stuff really matters. And from the standpoint of the ballots being tossed or anything like that, I don't buy it. If those things are out there, let the people see it. And, we can make our own evaluation, or they can make their own evaluation. As it stands, Donald Trump is losing this race. And his friends may try to push for these guys to get rid of, one vote or another. But at the end of the day, there are thousands of votes that Donald Trump is behind. And, Brad clearly is coming out because he wants to make that known, almost like a whistleblower, that this is what's taking place. Meaning he doesn't want to deal with this pressure by himself. He wants to deal with this pressure with a spotlight on the various actors that are involved in this. He doesn't want to deal with it. He's, to some degree, I guess, having a clean race. Stacey Abrams. One of the things that people need to realize, under normal circumstances, Republicans win those races. This is what I was going back to. Republicans win those races. But Republicans typically win Georgia also. Now, my original thought was that Democrats were going to win the House and Democrats were going to win the Senate. My thought was because Donald Trump has lost all of these lives, and I have a hard time believing, even with a candidate as inert as Joe Biden, that candidate wins. Well, unfortunately, for better or worse, that candidate didn't win. Those candidates did win. Now the catch becomes who takes the Senate. Those 2 races will decide who wins the Senate. If it's going to be 50-50 with a tiebreaker for Democrats, or whether Mitch McConnell takes it. If Democrats win both seats, you have a situation where basically Democrats have a majority. It's slim, but Kamala Harris could be the tie-breaking vote in that contest. And so they are praying for the votes that Stacey Abrams was able to get for Joe Biden to win Georgia to somehow be imparted in those Senate seats. After all, if you win Georgia and you're running for Senate seats, shouldn't you be able to, also pull those votes? So we'll see. It's a fascinating race, in regards to seeing how these guys are running, but that will make the choice in regards to who wins. The Democrats are still losing at this point because, again, it is Georgia, despite Joe Biden winning it. So I'm not going to keep this one. I just wanted to give a heads up on what was going on in regard to the Georgia countdown and everything else. So like, share, and subscribe.